On January 21st, 2008, a routine medical procedure left Mallory Weggman paralyzed from her waist down. Less than 2 years later, Mallory had broken 8 world records, and by the 2012 Paralympic Games, she had 15 world records and 34 American records in swimming. 2 years later, a devastating fall severely damaged her left arm, yet Mallory refused to give up. After 2 reconstructive surgeries and extended rehab, she won 2 golds and a silver at the 2019 World Para Swimming Championships.
You've been a competitive swimmer since you were 7 years old. What does swimming mean to you, and what type of, and the passion you have for the sport?
Yeah, I started swimming when I was 7 purely because my 2 older sisters were competitive swimmers. And as the baby of 3 girls, it was kind of natural that I just kept going to practices and sitting in the stands and watching them and standing, around the pool deck at swim meets. And so when I got a little bit older, I kind of figured like, why not swim myself? And so initially competing when I was a kid really stemmed from just the fact that it's what my older sisters did. And so I kind of followed in their footsteps. But it quickly became something that I realized I loved. I loved the community of it. I loved the freedom that water gives you. And that's always been a big thing. And I feel so fortunate that I built such a strong relationship with the sport as an age group swimmer when I was a kid and then through my teenage years, because ultimately that's what allowed me to entertain the idea of going back to the water when I was 19 years old, right after my paralysis.
Right. No, absolutely. In 2008, you went to receive your third and final epidural injection to treat your back pain caused by prosthetic neurological or neurology. Can you share with us a little bit about like what happened and then after getting the injection?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in June of 2007, and I was doing a gap year at home. I was looking at out of state universities because I was looking at going into journalism. And I decided because I had had some health battles, I was like, you know what, I'll just stay put, do a year of community college, get some of my generals out of the way, and then I'll transfer out of state. And I was getting my third and final epidural injection. For back pain. It was January 21st, 2008, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So I had the day off from class. And, I walked in that day and I never walked out. It was really actually kind of unfortunately quite that simple. And that was really hard to come to terms with. You don't go into something that routine thinking that paralysis is something that can come out of it.
Right.
And when I was paralyzed, I had no idea what life was going to look like. Like I said, I thought I was going to go home that afternoon and go back to class Tuesday morning. And instead, I was admitted to the hospital and I came home 6 weeks later in a wheelchair.
Did you, ever like think, before like what your swimming career would look like before your accident, your paralysis? That's not accident, but what caused your paralysis?
Yeah. Like I said, no, when I graduated high school, I thought I was done competing. I loved the sport. I knew I would always go back to it as a hobby and just for a form of exercise, but I didn't think I would compete again. And so when I got back in the water 2.5 months after my injury, it was really eye-opening to realize like how much swimming was still ingrained in me and how much I just had the itch and the itch to race again. And, I still remember that first race back. It was Memorial Day weekend in 2008. I was paralyzed January 21st. It's not that much time.
Mhm.
And I couldn't go off a starting block yet. I was still just kind of pushing off the side of the pool in the water. I was racing kids who were a decade younger than I was. And but it didn't matter because I was back to doing something I loved. And so it was really interesting how much that passion was reinvigorated after my injury. And I think that's just because a lot got put into perspective after my paralysis.
Right. Now, unfortunately, you also then had another setback a few years later, and it caused you to have nerve damage, which caused you to have difficulty moving around in your wheelchair. So, how did you manage that and kind of figuring out the new way to maneuver in life with four wheels?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's interesting. When I was paralyzed, obviously, I learned how to adapt to my circumstances with two strong arms. And that served me really well for 6 years. And then my arm injury happened in 2014. And when that happened, I literally felt like a rug got pulled out from underneath me. I mean, quite literally, because it happened in a fall. I was sitting on an accessible shower bench in a hotel room, and it came unscrewed from the wall when I was showering. And I came crashing to the ground and fell on my left arm. And everything changed during that time because, early on, I couldn't wheel myself. I was struggling with figuring out, like, okay, now what do I do for like getting dressed when I don't have control of my legs or my lower core? And now I don't have great control of my left arm, and I rely on that.
Mhm.
And it was a really big adjustment. For a few years, I wasn't driving. I mean, I essentially like had to relearn everything again, but it was 10 times harder because one of the things that I used to adapt the first time I didn't have anymore.
What is one practical piece of advice that you would give to other people who have injuries or disabilities and want to get into sports or swimming?
Yeah. I think first of all, my biggest piece of advice for, I mean, it goes for anyone, but especially individuals who are facing something that sets them apart, that makes them different in some way. I think that regardless of what your aspirations are, it's really important to remember that other people's reflection of who you are and what they deem your capabilities to be are not a reflection of what you're actually capable of. They're a reflection of those individuals' insecurities.
Mhm.
And I say that because as an individual with a disability, it is so easy to give weight to the words of a stranger in a grocery store, or weight to the words of somebody who's sitting on their computer behind a keyboard and putting out a nasty comment. And there's a lot of bullies in our world. And when you look a little different, or you talk a little different, or you act a little different, or you whatever a little different you are, people have something to say. It's like that difference gives their curiosity a free pass, and your privacy goes out the door. And so my biggest thing I would say to anybody who is in circumstances that sets them apart a little bit is to remember that other people's perceptions of what you're capable of is not a reflection of what you truly are capable of. It is purely a reflection of their own ignorance and insecurities. And with that, if you want to go be the next Paralympic swimmer or track and field athlete, or you want to become a nurse or a doctor or whatever your next thing is that you want to do, and maybe that's a little against the grain because of the circumstances you carry, who cares? Like, literally, who cares? Go do it, because there's a first person for everything. And who says you can't be first?
Mhm.
And I think that that's so empowering, because when you live with a disability or chronic health or anything
Right.
of that nature, society is really quick to say you can't. And I just encourage you to not let that stop you,
Mhm.
and to not let that be the thing that demotivates you, because we can. I mean, our community is so rich in talent, and I think it's worth showing off and letting ourselves dream and have ambitions. So, I mean, if you want to go be a swimmer though, go for it. It's an incredible sport. But whatever it is that you want to do, even outside of that, I think just knowing that instead of listening to the you can't and allowing that to change into an I can't, let yourself say, why not?
Right. Amen to that. That's like wonderful advice. Some of the best advice I've seen and or heard, and I interview so many people. So, well, this was lovely. Thank you so much.